Okay, well, welcome everyone to our up close and personal event. My name is Rachel Calloway, and I serve as the director of Spark, the Music Leadership Laboratory here at the University of South Carolina School of Music. I also serve as instructor of voice and teach diction, and have had a varied career as a singer, as both a soloist, a chamber musician, professional chorister, opera singer, you name it, I've probably tried my hand at it at some point. And today I'm joined by my colleague, Jeff Vaughn. And Jeff, if you would introduce yourself, that would be great.
Hey, I'm Jeff. I've served as the Assistant Director of the Music Leadership Laboratory at the University of South Carolina School of Music since 2016, I believe. I'm also a percussionist, and I facilitate drum circles and other rhythm events as well.
Thank you, Jeff. Today we're discussing some different ideas around networking and friend raising. And we're doing this online. Started off, of course, because of the pandemic, but now we're really delighted to be able to use this model to connect with our friends and colleagues and alumni who live a little bit far away from us. So, in that way, we're making the most of the situation. And it's our second event of this type during this academic year. And it's also our second one, which features alumni of the School of Music. And tonight, joining us are two very distinguished alumni who have their own interesting and personal approaches to these ideas of network and friend raising. And first, I'd like to welcome Carrie Lee Pearson, who graduated in 2018 with a Master's of Music in Voice. And Carrie Lee, would you just say a few things about yourself?
Sure. I am originally from Minnesota, grew up in Orlando, went to South Carolina for my master's, where I actually studied with Professor Calloway. It was both my first year and her first year, which was fun. I actually was pretty involved with Spark while I was there. I was in the inaugural collective, which was a really great time. And that's where I also met Christopher. And we did lots of performing. And now we're back in Florida.
Great, thanks. And Christopher Schoelen, would you tell us a little bit about yourself? We know that you're a 2019 Doctoral of Musical Arts graduate in the guitar area.
Yes, yeah. I am a classical guitarist, and I graduated with my doctorate very recently and studying with Professor Christopher Berg there at U of SC. And before that, I was in Boston, where I did my master's at New England Conservatory of Music. And before that, I was living in Spain, studying flamenco and classical music at the Conservatorio de Manuel Castillo. And then I'm kind of going in reverse order, right? I did my bachelor's at Humboldt State University in California, actually. And since then, I met Carrie Lee Pearson, and now we're in Florida, and I'm teaching 4 classes at a high school here. And then also I'm starting a guitar program at the local college at Flagler College, which is a very small private school that is kind of trying to start a music program.
Very pretty small school.
Great. And since you mentioned Flagler, Carrie Lee, would you just tell everyone also what your professional life is like there? And I know you're teaching as well at Flagler and some other places.
Yeah, so I was teaching private voice lessons, but they had to scale back a little bit. So they just have the kind of older staff teachers right now. But I'm still teaching a music appreciation course in collaboration with the Honors College or the Honors program there. And it's actually in collaboration with an English teacher. So he's teaching English text literature class. So he's teaching literature that corresponds to the topics in my class and vice versa. And we get to collaborate a lot, which is really unique and fun to do.
Excellent. Thanks. And I'm going to also let our guests know, that, those who are watching this event know that Carrie Lee and Christopher are also recently married. So we want to say congratulations to the two of you.
Oh, thank you. Newlyweds. Yeah,
we're not social distanced right now.
That's right. You're in each other's bubble. And also we know that while at the university you formed a duo, which has really taken off as it seems a really important part of your professional lives. Would you just share with everyone a little bit about what that is, and then we'll continue?
Yeah.
Yeah. So we started a duo in South Carolina, and a voice and guitar, a very classic combination of the voice and guitar duo.
We started working together before we started dating.
We did, and it was, and since then we decided to call ourselves Deux Saisons, which is 2 seasons in French, and we play pretty much music from the Renaissance to we do a lot of contemporary music as well. And while at the University of South Carolina, we also did a couple competition, the Creativity and Music Awards competition and won a couple of years with our creative concerts that we came up with.
Both separate and together.
Super. And I think that's the perfect way to kind of segue into my first real question for you both, which is, what does networking mean to you? And Carrie Lee, if you would start us off, and then Christopher, you can share your thoughts as well. That would be wonderful.
Sure. I guess networking to me is mostly building, like the idea of the net. I guess it's more like a web, like a spider web. It's building a web of connections, a web of people, of locations, things that you can rely on, things that you can connect with, and support as well as supporting. So finding those connections with people that can be part of you, but also that you can give to them.
Excellent. Thank you. Christopher, how about you?
Yeah, very similar answer. I think it's just making strong, good connections with people from all over the world. And in today's world, it's a little bit easier to do that than probably at other time periods with the internet and with Zoom platforms that we can even connect to do this talk with you guys. It's just about making as many of those as you can, especially in a professional career like music.
Yeah, great.
I suppose there's like different levels too, because there's like your social network, the people that you know really well, your family, then there's your professional, but then there's like the audience and community.
So yeah, right, sort of like overlapping circles. We were talking about that in a meeting last week of how things kind of intersect in different ways, and it seems that our networks do that for sure. Have your perceptions of networking changed since you graduated? I feel like for many students at every sort of area, or if you will, grade level of a university like South Carolina, these ideas can feel a little bit different. And so I'm curious for you as recent graduates of the master's and doctoral programs, have your thoughts about networking changed now that you're out there in the professional world?
Yeah, they have kind of doing the doctorate. I feel like after your master's, you've learned a lot about networking, and so when you're at the doctoral level, you've kind of established how you do networking and how you would go about creating a network and expanding upon it. That was my opinion of my experience anyways. Kind of, I felt like at the master's level, I learned a lot about that. And then at the doctoral level, I kind of just expanded upon it a lot. But with the, the horrible pandemic this past year, I would say my networking perceptions changed a lot due to that. And I think it did to a lot of people, on how one could network and different ways that you could go about it. So basically this past year specifically, I've learned a lot via networking through the web, online. If it went just going through, if it just meant going through my Facebook page and like friending as many guitar players and musicians as I possibly could, that of people that I know or people that I admire. I felt like that was, a big part of it. And then a lot of it also was finding other avenues of um, doing my creativity and doing my, doing um, music besides just the live like a concert hall setting. Um, so
You
I
also found Fiverr.
so yeah,
Fiverr.
so through it, I found a few. There's a lot of different sites that out there. I found one called Fiverr, which is a marketing kind of professional artistic marketing website, and I just kind of tried it out because it was there were other guitarists on there wanting that they put up like a storefront basically saying like I'll record a minute of music for you, and through that I actually met a lot of people because I posted a storefront, and I met a lot of people just kind of asking me like a lot of times it was kind of a bogus project, like somebody would say like, can you I don't know, make what did I get? Can you record like this symphony on guitar? And it's like, well, no, I can't really do that, because that would it just take a lot of, it's a little too much. So it'd be things like that or something. But I did make a lot of other great connections. I actually found a composer friend. One of the composers I found, he's now more of a friend because we did so many projects together, and he enjoys composing guitar music, and now I've recorded a few pieces for him that he wrote or composed, and then
You didn't just record them; you worked on them with him.
I worked on them with him, and then
because Chris, when it's kind of funny listening to the conversations. He basically came to Chris with this piece saying it's unplayable. Every guitarist I give it to says it's unplayable. Can you help me make it playable? So you worked with him a lot.
Yeah, and then since then he's actually written a couple pieces for our duo in other projects that we've done, and he's just one example of kind of how I've realized how much opportunity there is with just online, just doing music online, and the possibilities of things that you could achieve.
Which when he first made the account, I was really skeptical of it because it just seemed, I don't know if it was just me as like a vocalist thinking like, I don't know if that's something I want to touch with a pole or not. But after watching him make this connection with this one composer, it made me really interested in it. And so I ended up making my own account, and it's really interesting how, sometimes you get requests that you don't necessarily like, and you'll tell, oh, I'm sorry, this isn't really for me. But then you get one that's like, oh, this is really interesting. I like what you're doing. And then it kind of teaches you about sometimes a little community you didn't know about. Sometimes it brings you down a rabbit hole of a group of people. But also Christopher just used that platform to completely self-publish his second album.
Wow,
Right.
congratulations.
Thank you.
It's interesting to hear you talk about this because it's not a platform that I'm familiar with. And I think especially for those of us in small ensembles or soloists like yourselves, it's interesting to sort of diversify our projects, right? Or for those of us who are interested in creating new music, whatever that broad genre could mean, it sounds like this is just a new way of connecting with different types of folks, be they composers or producers or whomever.
Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, and that's the thing is, yeah, right. If we, as musicians, a lot of time, especially in the school setting, you're kind of stuck thinking like my connections have to be musicians, right? Like they have to be, a cellist or a saxophonist that I can collaborate with. But there's actually, there's lots of other skill sets that we don't possess and that help with our professional development, I think.
Wow, that's great. Thanks for sharing that. So you relocated from South Carolina to Florida, and I'm curious, making both like a geographical transition and this professional transition at the same time. Do you have any advice for our students in particular who may be thinking about moving elsewhere after graduation, and how to how to walk into that new place or a new environment, and think about networking when maybe you feel like you're starting from the beginning. I don't know.
Yeah,
You want me to go first? You want me to go first?
You can go first. Yeah.
So I guess so. There's two types of networking now, especially when you talk about the current day and age, especially post-COVID day and age, is like the physical networking, like your close community, and then like the online community. And we've both, since moving, we've worked on both, because especially when you move from somewhere, you want to keep connections. But then you also want to become part of the new community. So that's something that I've personally worked on a lot. When we moved, I started reaching out to organizations. I did what every singer does. The first thing I did was contacted all the churches and saw if any of them had a gig for me. But then that led to a lot. What I found out about St. Augustine is none of them did. None of the churches paid. And I was like, okay, well, but then I started meeting a lot of people, and we actually got our first gig in St. Augustine from my emailing. And then we ended up meeting some people who wanted to start a music program like that at their church. And we helped them start that up. And what that means to have what we've been defined as there as choral scholars. It all depends on the church you go to. Choristers, choral scholars, all of them. But because of that, we found this really nice community where now we're involved with the community choir. I'm on the board of the community choir, so I get to
Youth choir.
and then I'm the assistant director of the youth choir. So little connections just because we started networking by emailing and meeting people, going to rehearsals, going to performance. That's another big thing. Go to performances. Go to other people's performances. You'll bump elbows with some of the musicians and you might get a gig out of that.
Yeah. That's definitely good to do. Just definitely network as much as you can in the new community that you're going to. I will say that as we were graduating and coming here, Carrie also forgot to mention that she was reaching out to the college here. Which is kind of one of the reasons why we moved here, was because she approached them a couple times saying, "Hey, we're graduating soon. Are there any positions opening up?" And they said yes after a year, right?
The first time I contacted them was when I was still in my master's, but I was thinking ahead, and they were like, "We could take you right now." And I was like, "Oh, well, I still got a semester left ahead of me." And so then I contacted them again a year later and told them, "Well, now I'm also with this guy who plays guitar. You want a guitarist too?"
Yeah. So, and if you're, it's definitely a scary thought when you're moving to a new community, especially right after graduating. And sometimes you have a job in the music world, sometimes you don't. And so it's good to have something kind of planned ahead, but I understand, going to a new community and not having something planned ahead, because I moved to Spain where I didn't have any job prospects. I didn't speak the language, and I had to learn all of that and make find my spot that kind of there, and just through that, you can also, even if you don't have a plan, make a lot of connections and also find your group and be able to perform the way you want to as well. You have to be proactive about it. And I went to Spain and I met a ton of fantastic musicians and started a band there, played flamenco with a lot of great music, fantastic guitarists. And it's that's possible too, but they're both, but it's kind of scary, especially after graduating, right?
And then there's the online networking. And there's so many platforms right now. There's platforms to teach, there's platforms for social media, there's platforms for performance. Actually, Christopher connected with this organization out of Boston when he lived there called Group Muse. and it's for house concerts. So you have someone host your concert, and your host is in charge of arranging everything. But Christopher reached out to them during the COVID pandemic, and we actually got an online version of Group Muse with them, which was really interesting. And Christopher teaches a lot online. I haven't, it's another thing that I haven't decided whether or not I like it. I've done it a couple times, still not sure if I like it, but Christopher's done a lot with that.
Right. Yeah. So there's a lot of possibilities on the internet now, especially after this pandemic, that, things that you can do just online, and you could live anywhere and still be a musician, possibly, with a lot of opportunities just online, maybe even.
And it's amazing how many people we've met because of online. But even more than that, what's kind of been special in a way is how much we've reconnected with people, like people that Chris went to or met rather in Spain. We've reconnected with them. We did a small little gig on Instagram with a friend of his that he met in Spain, and it was all of the media was in Spanish, and I didn't understand it because I don't speak Spanish, but it was still, it's a nice thing that you don't get to do unless you keep those connections.
I was saying to another colleague the other day, it sort of feels like classical music is finally catching up with other more popular music, styles and genres right now, in embracing, this work online. I mean, I know for certain that pop singing lessons have been happening online for a very long time, and even in as closely related fields as like contemporary musical theater. But I would never have even dreamed of taking or offering, a lesson to someone online until this all happened. So I guess we're learning to make the most of it, and it'll be interesting to see how this kind of takes shape as hopefully the pandemic continues to subside. Oh, thanks for that.
Right. Yeah. You're welcome. Yeah.
So I definitely appreciate the silver linings that y'all have been able to find, coming out of the pandemic, and that's something I'm always encouraged by in the conversations I'm having with fellow artists as we all kind of transition out of this period where there weren't gigs, and everyone's transitioning from physical to online and all this crazy change. But it's just inspiring to see so many folks, learning from it and growing through it. So kudos to you, and I just wanted to shout that out too, for all of our students who are also kind of adapting, still at 1 year later and everything. So one thing that I've always been, knowing both of you individually and then you as a duo and now you as a marriage, is you've always taken spent a lot of energy in growing relationships, and not only meeting new people but meeting like people with very diverse interests, both professionally and in the creative work that you're doing, but also in your personal lives. And I refer to that as friendraising, right? It's like, our students are very familiar with fundraising, raising money to do really cool things. But it just so happens that building your network, building your friends, investing in friends can also yield some great opportunity and some great things out of that. And I think y'all are a perfect example of just being able to do some really interesting things that you might not have even thought of just because you spent the time to invest in friends. And so I'm wondering if you could maybe, as yet another pitch to our students to invest in people as well, maybe share something cool or interesting that's come out of again, investing in people, friendraising.
Yeah.
We do a lot of collaborating with composers. That's something that we enjoy doing. We like it's fun, and it's a good platform to create off of. But especially, so we just did a concert in December that was all new premiere pieces. And you don't always, especially when you're just graduated, hate to burst some bubbles, but you don't always have a lot of money to start with when you're planning projects. And we didn't get the funding that we wanted for this concert, but we still wanted to do it. but we already, all of the composers that we worked with, we already had a relationship with, and we were really excited to work with them, and we remember them because we have this relationship with them, and because they created for us at a time when we really were wanting to perform new music. And so we always look for opportunities to bring them back, whether it's performing a piece for them that they wanted premiered, or recently I got the opportunity to set up a talk at Flagler College, and I could invite some musicians or composers. And so I used that as a great opportunity to reach out to one of the composers that composed with us in December, because we loved her piece and she has really great point of view. And so it was a really great opportunity to kind of, you know, reach out to that friend, reach out to that colleague, and give her an opportunity, while also giving my students an opportunity to learn more about the creative bubble that classical musicians are in.
Yeah, and I think it's super important that kind of like how Carrie Lee was saying, that you want to keep the people that you've worked with before, especially if you've enjoyed working with them, keep them in your keep them in your circle, and don't things like that. And music is so much that the music world is so much the kind of world where it's I'll if you scratch my back, I'll scratch yours, a lot of the times, because you're collaborating together. And I mean, that's what it is, collaboration.
Mhm.
And I think it's important to, when developing new friend raising, developing new relationships, it's good not to be too, maybe not too, like, just don't be too picky about maybe what you're looking for, perhaps. I mean, it's great. Also, it's good to surround yourself by great people and great talent, great talent as well, and things like that. But when we were coming here, we were looking for opportunities, and we actually did we did a performance where we weren't paid, and it was for a very good classical duo that's here in the area. But we made a great connection there just by doing that concert. We didn't get it as a freebie, kind of, so it's important to do that kind of stuff, to help your fellow musicians, your friends out, to when it comes to friend raising, I think.
Musicians are
So
almost always the first support for other musicians. So Christopher and I attended the Cortona sessions for new music, and that was one of the warmest, greatest audiences we've probably ever performed for. Every time I go back to listen to a specific recording and I hear the applause come up again, it's just that being surrounded by such supportive people is always so wonderful, and it's even better when you can support them too.
That's beautiful. I like how you're talking about both flexibility, right? And like knowing when it's good to kind of do something that, yeah, maybe there's not really a fee, or fee's not great, or maybe the piece is a little bit different for you or whatever, but to find that flexibility so that you can continue to sort of like, I like how you used the word web early on in this discussion, Carrie Lee, like kind of spread your web out larger, and again, then, connect with different people, organizations, or whatever that you may not come across in a regular way. And I also, that idea of sort of like, I don't want to say not always doing things for free. It's not about that, but it's just about being open to understanding that there's like a different time and a different place for these interactions, and that you're then cultivating community, really, with your music making and with your art form. So yeah, that's great to keep in mind. Could you just kind of go one step further with this idea, and just tell us, what's the impact, do you think, of networking and friend raising on your creative process, and especially in creating new projects for yourselves?
So
you want to go first?
sure. This isn't rehearsed, no. So I guess first to talk about our creative process and how we've kind of worked with things, like Christopher said, we did the creativity and music at with Spark when we were at South Carolina. And kind of our process is always that we make a big list of things, whether it be genre, like we might write, oh, we want to do new music, we want to do romantic music, anything like that, or things like mental health, audience participation, paint, beer, it might be anything that we want to somehow incorporate. And what we do is we go through our big brainstorm list and kind of circle the things that we were drawn to. And this is what we almost always do when we did our first collaborative thing at South Carolina, which was iPlay, and it was an audience participatory new music event. The things that we had circled was commission pieces and audience participation. When we did the music and meditation, the things that we had circled was mental health awareness, physical health awareness, and I think we circled something about music too. And then for this recent one, the thing that we decided we liked was this feeling of when you're kind of constrained and a little afraid. A lot of times that's where beauty and art comes from, this idea of the Renaissance. And that's where we came up with this new premieres event that we did in December, where we commissioned 5 pieces. And to now connect it to the networking, it's good to rely on professionals of other collaborative areas, other interdisciplinary things, when you're unsure of how to do something in your event or where to go with your event. So for iPlay, for the audience participatory, we wanted them to make instruments. So we met with someone who was a woodworker, and she kind of helped us figure out how to do that. When we did the music and meditation, we met with a mental health professional, and she kind of talked about the things that we should do, the things we shouldn't do, the vocabulary to use.
Yeah.
When we also wanted
what was
to
her what was her
the bio break.
Bio break.
Instead of a potty break or a bathroom break, she said, call it a bio break.
Just kind of good vocab,
Yeah.
That's a new one to me, a bio break. I like that.
She said that encompasses drinks and food as well. It's a bio,
which we had
thing.
at our event, so
Yeah.
so it worked out well. Yeah.
We wanted to do finger painting or something too, but we talked to a painter to ask her advice, and she said, don't do it, it's too messy, it's going to become the whole event. So reaching out to those people. And then also for the most recent one that we did, we wanted to bring in an artist, but because we ended up working with this organization that hosted us, the Timucua Arts Foundation, they actually host an artist. So we were able to tap into their network, and they actually supplied the artist for us because it's just part of what they do. So kind of relying on others a lot of time can create things in your event that you didn't even know you could have.
Right. Yeah. I think the big takeaway from what Carrie Lee's saying is that, when you're making events or putting on performances, definitely don't, kind of humble yourself to not think that you can do everything, because with all the events and all the projects that we've done, we've had a lot of help. And so when it comes to friendraising, that you're going to need, that support to help you create whatever it is you're creating. It's a lot of work, anything, just putting on a performance, any kind of project is a ton of work. Making a CD, but is a lot of work, and I had Carrie Lee do the art, do the front cover.
I did the artwork.
I had to get somebody to do
Not the painting.
I had to find somebody to do the painting.
It sounds like you're both very confident in knowing when to ask for help. And I think for some of us, when we're getting started at whatever time in our professional life, sometimes we feel awkward asking for help, or we feel like we're supposed to just figure it all out and know how to do it all ourselves. Can you just throw out any advice for someone who's just getting started maybe in building this network, and they know they need help, but but they don't want to seem unprofessional, or they don't want to seem like a newbie. I don't know.
I guess my big advice would be if you're really unsure, have someone that you feel really comfortable with, like either read through emails, read through conversations, have mock conversations so that you have that little bit of extra confidence. We read each other's emails all the time or anything before sending it, just because it's good to have that second opinion. It makes you feel
Second set of eyes.
more confident. Do you have any advice?
Yeah, right. And I mean that's the beauty about being a student, is that you've got your teacher, right, to ask you a lot of these kinds of questions, or to ask a lot of these kinds of questions too, which, you know, which yeah, but you don't want to seem unprofessional sometimes, to your teacher or something, but then you ask, it's a good time to ask a friend, and
That's actually another, oh, go ahead.
no, that was all.
That's actually another alumni network to definitely, or another network rather, to definitely tap into, is your alumni network. Other students or your past teachers, because a lot of times your teachers want you to do well because you're a little bit of them. In a way, you're part of their network too. So it's good.
Definitely. Thanks for that.
Right.
So this has all been fantastic stuff, by the way. I think this has just been a really great conversation so far. And again, I'm not surprised, because we always have great conversations and y'all are always doing such interesting things. You both mentioned the processes that you each had taken in kind of, transitioning from student to non-student, and kind of the networking or reaching out to people, or lifelines. And so I'm wondering if there's maybe one piece of advice that each of you could give to our students who are looking at life outside of school. Is it getting someone to read your emails 3 times? Is it making a super awesome Google document? Is it cold calling people? Give us one thing each, because there's only one thing, but
Right. I would probably say, be open to try new avenues, new roads, new things. Don't, if stick with one. If you have one that works, that's great, but still you want to branch out and try other ways of networking, or of doing projects, because I mean that's music, isn't it? It's constantly changing, right? And so that's my big advice, is try new avenues, new streams, new things, continuously, and be testing them.
Well, the first advice that came to my head had nothing to do with networking. It was when you graduate, one of the hardest things for me is scheduling times to practice. It is very difficult when you graduate and practicing is no longer part of your daily routine as a student, to find that time and to not be tired. So scheduling practice is probably the thing I struggle with, and the thing I definitely say, think about that.
That's a tough one, isn't it?
It is.
Oh yeah, in the right, in the professional, right.
But I like what Christopher said too, also trying new things. Like with Fiverr, something we were unsure of but grew with. Try to become part of the community that you're in, even if you don't think you're going to be there for a long time. Learn about the community, learn about the people in the community. It'll make your time better. You'll have more fun
and more success, probably.
and more success, because people won't just want to have you, or rather you won't just be looking for venues will want to incorporate you because you're part of the community.
That's a way more sort of like whole way of looking at this this idea of networking, and we kind of touched on this in different ways throughout our conversation tonight. But I mentioned in a previous session that I think for some people starting out, they feel like networking is like skeezy. There's like a bad some folks feel like there's like it's like you're trying to get something, or I don't know. I think it takes time to understand in our professional lives, and certainly for our students, many of whom are already working professionally as well, that networking is not about that. And especially the way you two have described it tonight as investing in your community, both your social community and your professional community, and by making that investment, of course, all this returns to us, 20-fold in all kinds of surprising and unpredictable ways. So I really appreciate your time. Is there anything else you'd like to add before I wrap it up with our greatest thanks?
Something I'd like to add is trust that, when you are reaching out to people and coming up with ideas, and it doesn't even necessarily, we're talking about like the big ideas that we have that are less conventional, if you want to call it that. Even if it's just a concert, like you want to put on a quartet performance, trust that the people you're reaching out to want to be part of it too, because most of the time they do. When we've worked with composers, I know one composer we worked with during COVID, they they were struggling with writer's block, and they were struggling with COVID and being stuck at home, and the way the world just was, not a happy place in general. And it gave them that outlet to find some inspiration, something to do, something productive. And so it really helped them through things just as much as it helped us be able to have something to practice and get to perform. And then the other thing that we had in this recent concert is we collaborated with a brewery, and they made a new beer, and they named it after our duo, and it was a saison, just like de saison. um, and they hadn't done a saison in a while, but we kind of gave them that little nudge to try again. And also we found after contacting them, like it was one of those things where they're a pretty big brewery in Orlando, and you email them thinking like, oh, they might not want to do this. It might not seem it's kind of weird or something. And we found they were actually super excited. Oh, we've never worked with a classical duo before. This is super cool. We're always looking for inspiration. And so they were more than happy to work on it with us. So most of the time, others are looking for an outlet and creativity too. So trust that they'll want to do it as much as you will.
Yeah, just to kind of tag that a little bit, I would just say probably don't be discouraged too much if you do come across somebody you're trying to network with and they give you a foot in your face or something. Just don't get, because that will happen as well. Just don't get too discouraged by that. And if you're looking for something and somebody doesn't give you a good answer, just try to ask somebody else, I would say.
That's great. I love that. Sort of trusting that people are receiving what you're putting out there with like a positive sort of outlook or positive energy. Maybe they can't, employ you right now, or maybe they're not able to participate in your project or whatever, but that doesn't mean that someone's sort of like sending negativity towards you, or that they weren't excited or interested to hear from you, right? And Carrie Lee is very good at this, and we've spoken about it before, but I'm going to kind of throw in one little nugget as well, which is that if you write someone you don't hear back from them, it's good to follow up with them. That they're not necessarily ignoring you or, thinking that you're not very interesting. They just maybe forgot to respond to that email. And it's as simple as that, right? And
Right,
Carrie Lee,
right.
you're great at that, and I think that's important too for those who are just starting out with this kind of cold calling, if you will, cold emailing folks, to know that it's okay to, ask one more time. Certainly, twice is absolutely okay until you get a response. And sometimes the third time isn't even so bad. So, with that, I just want to say, thank you to both so much, Carrie Lee and Christopher. I mean, we feel really lucky to have you for this conversation, and as someone who's worked with you both in multiple musical environments, I feel really excited and inspired by what you're doing now, and a little bit of teacherly pride as well. But it's really very special to have you here to talk with us and to share what you're doing and how you're doing it, and hopefully inspire some others to use your sort of model to create their own ensembles or projects or professional lives in music. So thank you both so much. And to our students and friends who are watching this online, thanks so much for joining us. And we hope that you'll be able to incorporate some of these, techniques and practices into your professional or in personal lives. And I know that I'm always very happy to be learning from the cool people on the block who are doing it better and in new ways and on new platforms as these two are. So I look forward to also incorporating these into my work. So thank you. Special thanks as well to my colleague Jeff Vaughn for all the work that he did to put tonight together. We so appreciate you. And students, if you have questions for these two, you can send an email to spark@mozart.sc.edu. We'll try to connect you. They're also very present on social media, so you could probably find them there.
Absolutely.
But
We
thank
probably
you again.
have friends in common.
That's right. You probably have friends in common. But thanks again for joining us. De Saison, Carrie Lee Pearson, and Christopher Schoelen. And thanks to everybody in our U of SC family. We're really glad you could join us for tonight's event. Take care.
Thank you guys. Thank you.